The demons they killed. It's all over this place. If you are not great, your ears are tired, breathing like a running dog. He glanced at the photographer. Is calmly whistling and scratching her eyes. It's freezing. I think this guy is so cool. Over here, the photographer turned to laugh and said he had won. Now it's your turn. Seconds later, it's not completely stupid. When the cold sword comes here, he swung Ra's muscle and the chain broke. The sword glared at the private, not great. It scares him. He looked at the broken chain and shouted, "Kill him now." 3 soldiers immediately rushed to attack the sword. He quickly spread his wings. But surprisingly, when the swords come, it is impossible to cut the flesh of a sword. Make yourself not horrified by asking questions. What's going on? One of them took a sword straight at me. But the man of the sword is harder than stone. It can't be pierced. The sword is broken. Now they realize that this body is too hard. The sword glared furiously at him. He threw a punch right into his chest. Do this, guy. He breathed his breath and soared into the sky. Up to the top of the closet and watched the green banana. Not so great, my soul turned to him. Man, what does this mean? Calmly, he asked me what I was doing. It is now seeking your revenge. You should still pay more attention to him. Here, the sword brings out the hands one by one. Even if the sword slashed at him, it was meaningless. He punched the soldier straight. Keep him flying to the sky. Then turn to talk. And 3 names make private, not to hot blood. Hurry up and talk. The rest of us immediately listened. Ba names and Ba aimed to attack the sword. But when the 2 men risked their lives, it's not great to take the opportunity to fly your ass. He ran thinking he deserved to die. Why is that? But private is not great. You can easily go like that. She stopped him and asked him where he was going in a hurry. He glanced behind him. I ask you why you want to die. He immediately pulled out his knife and slashed it to the photographer. But he leaned softly away. Then calmly say, I don't want to fight you either. I just want the sword back. Please come back to me. I told you he turned into a tiger. Pandas emit yin and yang gas. That gas is straight to the private, not great. It amazes him. I know that you love the master. He was immediately knocked a meter away. Thinking silently, this guy looks like he's white. But the real power is the golden level. It is true that he had a previous conspiracy. And then this bad guy gets knocked up and down. Like a stone thrown under the lake. He lies cowering on the broken ground in horror. Body trembling, I saw the sword coming, with big wings on my shoulders. At this moment, a powerful force was closing in on him. Every step of the sword comes. Make the ground crack. The sword spoke to him. You shouldn't insult my mother. It's not great right now. It seems to fall into despair. Hands trembling with a dull face screaming. I'm sorry, forgive me. As the cold sword asked back, do you think I will let you go? The hand is clenching. The color is not perfect. Please understand the teeth is also meaningless. I will risk my life with you. He stood up and shouted. And then we've got 6 blood chains flying around. Photographer commented, 6 pieces of Kai chimpanzee blood chain have not experienced death. Over here, I'm not in a hurry to throw these into my mouth. After it's done, the body of the mind is not perfect. Blow out the ground. It cracked like a battle with the wind. He quickly turned into the body of a giant. The muscles swirled and the shirt was torn apart. The head is like a grape. Stand up to the sword. The photographer here. I'm surprised. Not unexpected. Pants of the World Bank. It is of such good quality. I'm not crazy. My blood is screaming to death. He threw a punch straight to the sword. But when the punch comes close, the sword is twisted and fluttered. He threw a punch in the face. Two VA resources together that make the ground drop. Private's punch is not great, can't fight back. It was thrown out the back. Make him confused. Ask how it could be in the meantime. The sword continued to throw its punch. One release out. Make yourself not awesome, all jaw. It's a scar. Then the sword takes a shot. Make him like a ball that soars up into the sky. It's very painful. It didn't stop there. The sword went straight to him. Bonus extra penalty shot. Make him fly straight back. Just keep going like that. The sword uses its wings to shoot straight. He flies from side to side. A few times like that. Make not great pain to numb. Whipped up the shore and down the field. Now the sword is up. Then combine the two hands together to strike a fatal blow. He shot a bullet in his head. That's not cool. Made him land on a beam. There's a kiss deep in the ground. That this leaves the ground smoky and rocky. What does the distorted sword see? Doubt about coming down to see it. It's not great to jump up suddenly. With a 1,000-pound punch. He punched the sword away. But the body slowly wobbles in the air. He was bleeding out of his mouth in pain. The photographer was surprised. After using the Kai chimpanzee chain to strengthen it, can strike the injured sword SAO. The sword here fell to the ground. I can't breathe the fairy like a dog. Thinking behind the chain of blood Kai chimpanzee is gone. I can't take control of my meridians. Suddenly, one side of his arm shrank. The sounds of trouble. He rushed out with his ass. I told myself that if I didn't leave now, I wouldn't be in time. But I just ran a few steps. The pain has moved on. Make him worth dying for. Meanwhile, the sword stood in the smoke. He gritted his teeth furiously and clenched his teeth. Don't run. And then the body emits tremendous energy. It's like a tornado. He opened his mouth wide. It's not great to direct that resource to a private attack. When he's running away with his ass. Then the back is lit up. When you look back, the force of the sword is a fire dragon. It's opening its mouth, about to devour him. And quickly, the fire dragon swallowed him up. In one note, this place also exploded like a nuclear bomb. He looked up and felt the fire. Is it cruel? The face is also deformed to funny. Unexpected in this situation, I have learned the skills of the dragon. Compared to Kwong Ham, the principle of violence is even more harmful. The sword stood in front of the hole. To rub uncle, self-made to end the death, is not great. It's like falling into meditation and falling to the ground. Tears suddenly rolled up crying, excitedly called parents. The two of them are moving away. The photographer in the back was silent as he watched. The sword gradually adjusts the mood. Then get up and go to the photographer. Kneel down and speak. The sword is ready to obey its master's orders. She sighed for a moment and then said, "Wait a minute. I'm looking for something." When he finished, he jumped straight into the hole. After a while of searching, then I found the ring. The world of thought is not great. It's in here. 50 pieces of magic Kai stone also has weapons and armor. The Golden Master is rich. The other spaces are SAO food. He said, "Go find the others." After a search for scrap, photographer commented, "They're not as rich as they are." And then 10 days later, we attacked the world's medicine. And then bring a group of people to stop saving. You also know the families in the mountains. What is the situation? The sword said to its owner. There are 13 families in the mountain. A chaotic situation. Between the nations that are allied with each other, there are also very deep resentments. The strongest inside is the 3 kingdoms. In order is the World Bank, God's grace and mercy. They all have a pseudo-coordinate transmission. The other is raw, although only the black and gold are fake. But I can stand in this place. There are more or less some tricks. The photographer asked if there was anything else. Sword play. Deep inside the mountain, there are many settlements. People in these villages practice normally. The strongest is only gold. The inhabitants of the village often pay tribute, or they will be arrested. He became a slave to the 13 nations. Photographer exclaims betransmission level. There's a bunch of black gold. Unexpected in this dimension. There are so many players. There is no love in this world. They are all martial artists too. Continue reading in these 13 countries. Which country is the most political? The sword says it is Goddess Will. Hearing about the god of the dead makes the photographer wonder. The sword explained, the power of Goddess Grace, only after every budget. For the World Bank, always wanted to capture other worlds. That's why God's family and 4 other families. New alliance with each other, against the World Bank. Out in this mountain, there is also a town that nations often come to conduct transactions. The mayor asked if the town. The sword must be controlled by God. Photographer laughed softly. It seems that God is very popular with the people. The sword says the town is chaotic. After the nations have spoken to each other, have you decided to give it back to God? The robber wanted to have control of the town. But everyone is okay. The photographer seemed to understand. He said there were 9 days until the date. Maybe we should go there and try it. But the sword doesn't object. There are many eyes and ears of the world. There's also a lot of people from the World Bank. The news will be quickly transmitted to tie to no thief. The photographer laughed. There's no need to worry about this. Immediately in his hand, he took out the foam. Then rub it on your face to change your face. He looked at the sword and said you should try it. Give him a sponge to follow. The sword is as dazed as it is. Surprised to agree. And put that pile on his face and rubbed Theo. After regurgitation turned into a dazed face. He scratched his head. Should I change my hairstyle? After you've both dressed up as 2 dumbfounded faces. Right now, he looked at the ugly face of the sword. And laughing, haha. The sword was used for the first time. It's not mature yet. That's bad. The sword glanced at him. Look at the stupid face. But dare to laugh. Then the photographer told him to get rid of the body. Then we're on our way. The sword followed. After a while, let the sword change. Then praise. Nice to put this on. Haha. The sword also asked. What do we look like now? Photographer meets handsome. Then the sword asked the owner. The photographer said that I'm still handsome. Quickly, the two flew straight to the town. This place is very busy with traffic. Items are sold in all kinds of sidewalks, from weapons of cloth or treasure. Photographer exclaimed, unexpected in this raging mountain of love. There is such a beautiful town. But Saoi looks so skinny. The sword explains that the food here is extremely rare. Most of the meat here can't be eaten. There is not much arable land. Most of it is in the hands of the world. To my children, I only eat enough. Food is the currency here. The photographer sighed for a moment. The land in Kwangwi City is still very fertile. Meat is also a lot. He goes to the stall. I saw something interesting on the counter. If you see that, the seller is welcome. Does this young man need anything? She looked at the chimpanzees below. That think on earth full of Kai chimpanzees. I haven't trained yet, and I still have to hunt. So he put on a stupid face. How does this chimpanzee sell? Laugh and say, it's not expensive. You only need a piece of meat to exchange it. Then the photographer raised his eyes again. What about that? This is dragon soul stone mosaic and weapons. It can double the power of weapons. The salesman laughed. Hi, this is very precious. Must be a bag of food. That made the stupid photographer, Ra's face distorted to speak. The sword explained. There's a lot of minerals in this mountain. This type of mineral is extremely common. Bewildered photographer asks popular Sao. He immediately picked up a nearby stone and asked, what does this mineral do? The sword says, after the practice, this mineral can be used as a nose tip. Name. All of the worlds are made of this mineral. These heads, if you plug it into a lever, it will immediately melt. So it takes a lot of energy. The suspicious photographer asked, it is not only used once. What a waste of this time. This is a space ring. Buy all the minerals for me. The sword received the ring and immediately followed. Then you can say the name of the seller. Let's continue to watch. He goes for a walk to observe. The stall suddenly stopped. In front of a ball, this seems to be the spiritual mass. He looked at me with a blank face. The old woman said hello. The photographer picked up the ball to see. Just look for a few seconds and touch the body. That the ball opens up to reveal a stone inside. The stone inside is changing. The old woman put out an advertisement saying this young man. This is my heirloom. It's been around for over 500 years. If not now, the SA family fell. I don't want to sell it. The photographer had just looked at the snow and ice. In the legend of one of the 9 kinds of Lingzhu, the god of love master of the snow maple system, the photographer asked how this sold. The old man replied with 5 bags of food. It makes you stand still. Ask for 5 bags of food. I thought this was the law. It can increase soul. The force of the snow is doubled. The old woman saw that and negotiated. How much food is too expensive? So how does Ba make the photographer stunned? Thinking after the Dark Ages. The use of many treasures. It's all been transmitted 7 times. Maybe she doesn't. I know what this place is used for. They can only be exchanged for food. When she saw the silence, the old woman lowered the price. So 2 bags of food can't be less. At this point, the police are serious. 2 bags can't be exchanged, old man. Makes the old woman sigh sadly. Then he said, 20 bags of rice. 5 pounds of meat. It's all his. The old woman shoots people in front of food. The crowd saw it and opened their mouths to this euphoria. The old woman knelt on the ground. The corners of her eyes slowly began to tear. Run out. Look at the back of the photographer's head. Aesthetic photographer has the god of beauty. Your food will be safe. This is the sword right now. He threw down a big sack of minerals. Photographer, to make him admire. He asked people to eat so much food, just in exchange for 2,000 minerals. As the photographer said, you put all these stones into the world. Just space. It's very beneficial for you. It can help you increase your spiritual power. Until then, I will help you to find a dragon god that you can become. I love the spirit master. The amazing sword asked the master. Hurry to thank the owner. I urge you to collect them quickly. You're not such a client. Then the two of them walked down the street. Ask if you've been through it before. The sword, of course not. Then they both went to a building with a flag. He looked at the high court. Maybe this is God's shop. Go to see Sao. The sword followed. When you get inside, photographer observes a turn. And then I realized that the first floor is all normal stuff. Maybe the good stuff is upstairs. So we both went upstairs. Just arrived, his eyes immediately turned to the sword below. That exclaimed the air is horrifying. Immediately, a fat guy saw them. Rushed to advertise the product. Black inflammation Kai Kim extremely sharp iron like mud. At the same time, the mosaic contains the essence of fire. A guillotine that carries the whole deem. It can cause the opponent to burn. You really have a keen eye. The photographer asked directly how much it cost. The Kia replied, we only accept exchange. Let us see what you change for me. Food aesthetic photographer, we have excess. But it probably wouldn't be of any value to him. He handed out his hand and told you to watch this. The fat man took it. I'm amazed to see the medicine in my hand. The fat man laughed softly and said, Dark Ages trained monks and killed them. There are no monks left. Can practice Ra. Stop soul knitting. It's also the neighboring Phoenix Mao. Hearing this makes the photographer think. I met someone in the profession, but now he says something. 1 tablet is not enough. If you want to change blackheads, you need at least 200 tablets. This word made the photographer ask for 200 SAO. In my heart think like that, we still occupy a lot of comfort. He immediately handed out 2 bottles of medicine. That makes fat people think. Not bargain SAO. He laughed and told the young man to wait a moment. Not in time for the package. Suddenly, people and goods quickly disappeared. The fat guy. In the Dark Ages. Who escaped to the Black Hell. Almost everyone wears a lot of rings. Space according. There are many unspeakable treasures. But, pharmacy knit all have shelf life compared to pharmacy knit. Weapons are normal. The photographer threw the sword. Give it to you. Make the sword take it by surprise. I look at the photographer in front of me. Without saying a word. Meanwhile, the fat guy who's just putting away the medicine. When he saw the photographer, he ran to inquire. You are a SAO monk. Not seen. The photographer replied that he thought the NDTO immediately guessed Ra. He laughed and said, here is the blessing. I don't know what their names are or what their families are. The photographer replied, I don't belong to any family. You don't need to know my name. The reason for not thinking tiger is that training monks is very personal. then laughed and said, "Training the great monk of the world. We've always wanted to have a monk training. If you would like to join our family, as long as you ask, I'll notify the owner." The photographer applauded. "Joining your family is free. I don't want to be stopped. Working with you is also possible." I asked them if they wanted to cooperate. "How can we provide for the lower?" "A large amount of material for knitting." The photographer replied that we have no shortage of knitting materials. We haven't thought of any collaboration yet. I just came here today to buy some stuff. When he finished speaking, he left to let himself sigh. The sword continued up the stairs. Top are the guards who are standing on heavy guard. The police officer also said a lot of guards. Then go back and think about it. He just walked away and said, "On the 7th floor, we have to look closely. There are very few visitors on this floor. Is not to give up harm." The photographer noticed. Every piece is a good treasure. Since ancient times, there have been guardians. The photographer thought he was here. You have to buy something to bring back. Suddenly, his eyes were on something. Make him realize it's rare. Look at that. Realize that this is magic. Is prohibiting long-term rank magic that has 7. He's going to put his hand up and touch it. Then suddenly someone asked. Brother is interested in these Axis books, SAO. Surprised, the photographer turned to look. Then I saw a young man smiling softly. I thought of this teenager. He called me back and said he was a little interested. Here says these axles are really good stuff. It's just that it was all before the Dark Ages. The content of it has become very vague. Someone has also tried to use it. There's just no way to use it. To raw these axes leave the love. That is like chicken tendon. It's hard to swallow. He said he just shook his head. Photographer glances at aesthetic axes. The blood of a long-term lover. It's not easy to fade. It just takes a little processing to shine again. He said if it was chicken tendon. Let me bring you back to study a fan. He smiles, he smiles. It startled the Kier to see this ugly smirk. He said if you like it, give it to him. In his heart, he understood the language. It's an extremely rare person. I know this guy wants to change his heart. No tiger is a world disciple compared to reason. Blessed Cao Min much more. So the photographer refused to say unjustly. I want it, but I can't take it. So he took the vase from the space ring. He told me to use this medicine. Can you exchange the same? The young man heard this thought. Again, the medicine I want. It is the love of training. I also refuse to use any medicine in exchange. You will be able to change the request. Thinking of this, he picked up the medicine bottle. If you see the bottle without a lid, put it up your nose. Then suddenly, the astonished man spoke. Laugh, haha. Then respect is not equal to obedience, the photographer said frankly. Later, if we see something. He came here in exchange for Goddess grace. Ra will not refuse. The guy finished listening happily. Of course, there is no treasure in this place. You can choose at will. In my mind, this medicinal knit, this is the reason that no one can refuse. Maybe in this world. How to practice monks, Thong Dong. First, have a good relationship with him. Certainly not wrong. This guy laughed friendly. It makes me think I'm not enough to talk to a young man. There is a fake transmission level. It is better to have good contact with them first. After the photographer put away all the books, tell the sword to play a little more. So he goes around a little bit. Look at the items on display. Suddenly standing in front of something. There's finally something for me to get. Look at the horses in front of you. This item does not belong. Aesthetic. This dagger must have been made with the most divine spirit. The most divine spirit is an object without attributes. Extremely strong damage force. Can easily break through the opponent's defenses. This kind of material has only soul force, no nature. Can stop moving. Once poured into the soul, the force is hidden. It's perfect to use it as a dagger. There is something written above that I don't quite understand. It's different on each one. He turned to the young man. How much do these 3 knives cost? He was surprised to say this. These 3 blades. It's been passed down from the Middle Ages. Extremely powerful force. Unfortunately, no one has been able to stop it so far. But God's grace is also ours. I don't want to sell it arbitrarily. Aesthetic photographer is not willing to sell out. Afraid to wait for the price. The photographer immediately asked me 10 comments on how my soul knit. But the Kier shook his head in rejection. I'm just afraid of being a brother. Difficult to understand, glancing at the thought. 10 bottles. I'm not interested in Dan's soul. God is not going to sell it. So the photographer plays another trick, and he's telling the truth. The 3 blades are made from the most celestial. Is it an ancient artifact or not? I don't know. The first is that the spirit is characterized by, there are only talented people without attributes. We can work together. That the inscription above these 3 blades. It's extremely complicated. Only those who are familiar with writing. We can stop flying. Not 1,000 people have one. I understand the writing. Thousands of people don't have one. Do you keep it? I'm afraid that in 100 years there will be no use. Give it to the right owner. The guy also said. It turned out to be the most spiritual. This document is exactly that characteristic. The photographer continued in the hell of this world. Risk on all sides, even the God of the world. There may also be times when it's difficult to imagine. I have a weapon in my hand. There's no way to use it. Compared to having in my hand the knitting soul. Which side is more useful? The name Kier also began to waver. He also speaks morally. But 10 bottles of my soul knitting is not enough. Of course, cosmetic photography is not enough. Material only. It is enough to buy 100 jars of my soul. Something in this world can't be calculated this way. He immediately asked, I don't know how much you need. Kier coughed lightly and said 100 vases how I knit soul. The fake photographer was amazed. 100 comments is hard. Not so much in my hands. The name Kier is also confused. There is not so much beauty. There's not that much in the whole dark world. So he asked again, so you can spend as much soul knitting. The photographer paid the most. I can only give you 50. The guy complained that 50 bottles is too little. But the regents insist there's only so much. He is now. I suggest you can also use other medicines. At least it's worth 80 bucks. The photographer also agreed to make him realize. See how much you want this. Don't blame me for eating you. The photographer said more. We have a kind of pharmacy here. It's called the inflammatory chain that I can knit. 2 inflammatory chains I can knit. Is it equivalent to a soul knitting ball? The guy who thinks. Chain inflammation, I can dan martial artists to help the VI increase. Very helpful. There are 2 pieces I can knit. It's a long way from taking a soul knitting ball. Thinking of this, he raised his hand. At least 3, I can knit. It's the equivalent of a diamond. Photographer makes his frown moody accept. Then I can knit 3. It's the equivalent of a diamond. Who said I like these 3 knives? 50 vases I can knit, and 90 vases of inflammatory chains I can knit. Take it. The keyer is happy to offer 2 hands to give the item. Here are the 3 blades to keep good. In his heart, he spoke loudly. I met a pharmacist of this size. There is this medicine. My place in. The clan will grow. A lot of people try to succeed the clan. Except for me, there could be someone else. I laughed softly in my heart. I thought there was so much medicine to change. It's made from the celestial sphere for profit. He took it and thanked me. The name Kier goes by the name Thiu calls me Li Hang. I don't know how my brother calls me. If you need to buy anything later, you can come here. I told him to give me an hour. You can always call me a photographer. It's amazing to me. I thought I'd never heard of a photographer. I don't know if this is a real name or a fake name. The regent said I'll come again today. The 2 of them can talk and walk. I brought you down. Think about it in his heart. We are still a little wary. Now, there's no need to force an offer. He looked at the shadow of their backs and said to himself, business should be long-term. Ask a question to the owner. We use so many precious medicines. Just exchange these things. Even though SAO in this place is extremely lacking herbs, medicine is much harder to find than treasures. The photographer threw the ring for the sword. Don't worry for you. This ring, there are 1,000 bottles of medicine inside. If you use it, I will give you more. That's why the sword scatters the soul. Distorted to say more words. Then nothing new was found. Find an inn near town. Use 6 bags of food, pay 8 days fee to stay at the hotel. Into the room, he immediately displays the spoils obtained. Raw refer to. And then decide to look at these axes first. It just opened and made the photographer grumble. Dynamic buff force is strong. He's holding his chin up, thinking, civilization loves blood vaguely. After a few seconds of research, realize that it is 1,000,000-year-old. I don't know what creature to summon. Great part of people, they don't know their location. In this world, it all belongs to the world. Inside again, so many things in the world, depends on the dark world, is one of them. The black world must be a relatively small world. In the dimensions of the world, there's some extremely giant world dimensions. It's also full of danger too. The former ghost before Kier attacked the owner. It is from the depths that the world is summoned. Except for the world. There is snow in the world. To the world. Lava world. Inside the wide world, master. You can go out into the world together. The world dimension, that millions of emperors dwell, is to call these powerful creatures. In the next world dimensions, most creatures listen to the summons. But there are also a few creatures that don't listen. The photographer stood up and there's something about this level. I can still fix it. Fortunately, we have the materials. Stay away for a while. He took out a vase. It's blowing out white smoke. Retreat squats ass sitting in chair. Then blow it to the smoke. Stick dong medicine, key drugs. It's possible to love blood to restore its magical power. And then he poured this out. It just died. It's up on the spindle. Just recited the mantra. Suddenly, the shaft lit up. Illustration inside that display. The photographer picked up the perfect repair.